Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I acknowledge the Camaragal people who are the traditional custodians of this land. I would also like to pay respect to elders, both past and present, of the Camaragal people and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people present. Well, welcome to our second webinar for 2019. We do apologise. We had a little technical hitch right at the start, and that's being rectified as we speak. But I thought I would just take the opportunity to welcome you all to the second webinar for this year, and I do hope you've had a lovely day at school. You've had a good day, and that's been very productive for you. And we realise we're getting towards the end of the week. You're all very busy, and we do appreciate you joining us for this webinar. We're nearly ready to go. We'll be ready to go in a moment. So Martin's just joining us on screen now. Just before we get started, I'd like to just remind you of a few things. Membership to the Geography Teachers Association, either personal or through your school, is a wonderful opportunity to get access to resources like the video of this webinar. It will go in the members section of the video. So we're happy to provide this as a service to members and non-members, though to gain further access, we would like you to consider being a personal member of GTA, because if you're a personal member, all the information, the 4 books a year goes straight to you. And so we don't get lost. Sometimes we appreciate that in the school network they can get a little bit lost sometimes. So there's great benefits for you: access to all previous journals, activities, lots of HSC information, and also member benefits of reduction on conference fees and that sort of thing. So we'd like you to consider becoming a member. Membership forms are online. Also, the annual conference registrations are now closed, and we have got a large contingent of people. I think we've got over 220 on the first day, and similar again for the second day. So we're delighted that so many of you are able to join us for that conference from all over New South Wales, and I'm sure you will be absolutely delighted with the level of input that you're going to receive there. Also, our webinar program in term 2 is going to be content focused. Water in the World is going to be delivered by Louise Roberts, who's the Education Officer for Water in the World. So stage 4 focus. The second webinar in term 2 is going to be Louise Swanson, who is Deputy at Leichhardt, and she will be talking about the tundra ecosystem, which will be relevant for stage 5, ecosystems and management, but also have relevance for stage 6, ecosystems at risk, and also stage 4, landforms and landscapes. So we have much on offer at GTA, and there are other conferences coming up during the year as well. We'll be having 2 regional conferences, and more details will be available about that. The first one of those in Kiama and the conference. So we will look forward to seeing you there. Okay. You might notice yes, that there's a little bit of chat going on just while I'm trying to technician and Martin will get set up for this webinar. So just bear with us for a moment, and we will be with you. Okay.
Cool. Yep. Right, so I'll read it.
Okay. So I'm just going to
That's right.
I'm just going to come and join you now, Martin. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So we're
I'm the PowerPoint now.
Yeah, we go. So I'm delighted to have Martin Plus here with us today to meet with you and present to you. Martin's going to be talking about a great passion of his, which is local geographies and using the local area for geography inquiry. So Martin, of course, is a long-term member of the Geography Teachers Association of New South Wales, and also the Geographical Society of New South Wales as well. And you've served on that for many, many years. Yeah. And now you've also been a long-time geography teacher, and also now you are Head of Innovation?
No, Dean of Learning.
Dean of Learning. Yeah,
so I'm still teaching Year 10 Geography this year, and we teach an integrated learning unit, which is really essentially geography at the moment, which is really good. Probably remember look at the screen. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And given our focus today is about SGP and local projects, I thought I judged the drive, and I left Pennant Hills at 3 o'clock, plenty of time, and I literally got here with only about 5 minutes to spare. So
we're good. We're all here. So local geography.
Yeah, local geography. Hello everyone. I believe there's 30 of you here. Is there a way for us through dialogue, through conversation?
Yeah. Yes. If you've got questions as we go along, please hit the Q&A button and type in your questions. And about halfway through, we'll stop, and Martin will be able to answer those, and then again at the end. So, Michael, joining us in the room is our IT technician, Michael, who's doing a fantastic job here. And we're just going to put Michael's going to get Martin's screen, computer screen, and he's going to share that with you. So we will be able to get underway with the presentation.
It's coming up. That's the whole screen.
There we are.
Yeah, that's great. Now, what I'd like to do, and now I can open up the PowerPoint. Yep. Okay. What I'd like to do, everyone, is if you are on Twitter or if you are on Facebook, I'd like you to use the hashtag GTANSW. So if you have any queries or questions during the presentation, you can also ping me directly if you're on Twitter on @Blue at Twitter, just there, because I want to make this presentation as much as possible as interactive as we can. I have made available all my resources on my personal webpage, martinprince.com, so I hope that's of interest and use to you as well. So, as a starting point, what I'd like to focus on is actually too often we live in what I'd like you also to do, is give me a sense of where you are. If you just sort of reply in to say Sharon, and sort of give me the sort of, if you're in a country location or a suburb of Sydney, and I might be able to bring in examples that are relevant to your local area, based on my local area as well. So that'd be really great if we could get some feedback from you, whereabouts you're located, where you actually personally potentially live, and your school's location. So, going local and sharing. What I'd like to do is here, that's the summary of the program just there. I have a website that I've had for a few years, martinprince.com. It's got a mixture of three things on it: the runner, thoughts and self-help, and the educator. But over on the right-hand side, the screen's different now. If you go live now to martinprince.com, you will see underneath the Tamworth Conference program an AIS conference link, and also a webinar link to all the resources. Some of the resources I've provided overlap with the Tamworth one, but I've specialised for the webinar today. So if you go in there, there's a PowerPoint. There's PowerPoints there, so you may like to go in there, download the PowerPoint so you can see what's coming up and potentially ask some questions as you go along. So that's where I'm starting with for the time being. So, all right, so as I said before, I'd like you to actually use the hashtag GTANSW or contact me directly on Twitter. I may not get back to you now, but if you have any questions at all later on, I will get back to you after the presentation. And I do apologise for the delay, not the time to stay longer if you're happy to stay longer. Okay, I can see the next one is this. My first question for you is are you a geographer? Now, from my experience, there's some of you there who might be teaching geography, but you might be a history teacher, or an economics teacher, or a legal studies teacher, or a business studies teacher. My angle is to come in and try and get you inspired to see yourself as a geographer. My background has always been about whether we have an understanding of where we live. So I lived in Stratford, and Stratford was the basis of my honours thesis on the creation of Stratford in the 19th century. It's basically the area of the development. I lived at Redfern when I was at university, then Barrel in my first school, then St Ives, Barara, you can't see it on the right-hand side, Galston, and Pennant Hills. They're the suburbs I've lived in, and every time I've been in an area, I've always noticed during my running different things. I've taken photos over the years. I'm completely in my element with the mobile phone these days. Also, as a person who's moved around New South Wales a bit, every time I go to a country town, I will look at places and see what I've learned, how it's changed over time. It's been 30 years going to Bulahdelah, and I've seen that completely change, particularly now to bypass, sat down and did old-fashioned residential, commercial, and light industrial maps of the township of Bulahdelah that I was teaching in the class, and then I use that as the case studies. Main Beach up on the Gold Coast, I got into that through David Chapman when he was working in 1979 at City University as a post-geomorphologist, and more recently with some other friends have moved onto a property at the back of Tamworth just there. I've spent many holidays up there just looking at the Peel River and other water spenders there. As Sharon mentioned, I'm a bit of an explorer groupie, and that's why I've been involved with the Geographer Society of New South Wales and looking at the historical trends of geography. And as being a runner, I'll come to later on, I get to see a lot of Sydney and New South Wales, because every time I go into a community, I hit the outer roads and see what's there. And the other thing I'd like to share with you is the geography typically shares and uses technology. That technology has been a valuable tool to move forward and really make the classroom interactive with students. Way back in 2010, when I was talking about the national curriculum, I love this quote by Brian Croak. I can't remember the actual presentation now, but I remember this slide. Thinking national and acting local. And that's what I like to suggest with all the geography that you do. Too often as geographers, what we do is we go into someone else's local area to have the case study. Why can't we have the case study in the SGP and in the HSC exams and things like that as your local area? And that's what I'm hoping you'll get encouraged to do that by the end of this. A little quote here from Neil Young, the singer, and my passion for geography came from Strathfield because I went to school at St. Pat's Strathfield. I had some pretty interesting teachers at the time. They basically let you do your own thing with little guidance and structure of the teaching. But what I found was, when you look at this quote, okay, you've got to have an understanding of your place. And I knew even before I was in Purdue University that I wanted to research why Strathfield was this little unique area. The truth being known, I wanted to make my topic something like Strathfield, the oasis in Sydney's west, and we had all these big old heritage houses and things like that. It's changed a lot since the 1980s. Wasn't overused, and I ended up doing a historical geography study on it. But that then provided the basis of my involvement in local area geography. Okay, I'd like to start with this, and I've shared this. I was teaching Year 7 recently, and I'm assuming you can read that, so I won't read it. I was teaching Year 7, and we were just doing the spheres component for the new syllabus. And I was finding that in my case, the girls were identifying with the different things. So I made the language a bit more simple for them. I talked about our school's local area, and we've got about 150 borders, and I got all the girls to talk about their particular areas. So I got them to describe, what the atmosphere was like in the area, did it rain or not, rain a lot. Then I got them to describe, if they've got a house, whereabouts was the living area, what aspect was it on the slope, and then any animals in the area and the rest of it. But they're having trouble with that in the local area, and so then I went digging around in Hornsby. And what I found in Hornsby was that they didn't use the exact terms hydrosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere. They used terms like waterways, okay, which is the hydrospheres, trees, plants, and bushland, which is the biosphere, animals, okay, which is the biosphere, and it's off the screen to the right, which I can't see here, hydrosphere and lithosphere. And so what I was able to do is, and I was able to show the girls to where their local council area was. So you can see there, I've got a little list of the suburbs in my classroom, all the way from Warrnambool, Gladesville, Denniston, Epping, Turramurra. Then the activity became to go onto the local council website. So in my case, that was Coringai, and then that was Parramatta, it was the Hills, and then it was Hornsby. So the activity for every student at that point, and this will be applicable to the SGP in Year 11, was to go on to the different council websites and find information there. Now, it's a totally different world, council websites these days. 10 days before the council meeting in Hornsby on the Monday before the second Wednesday of the month, they release the business papers. The business papers have all the plans, they have all the things for cycleways, they have all the things for sport oval upgrades, all the secondary data to be used for SGP. So if you're getting if you're in the suburbs and people coming through, we mentioned there, Sharon?
Yes, we've got a lot of rural
Great, what
people.
Areas?
Okay, we're getting Forbes, sorry, I just got
Forbes.
Then this other one, Blue Mountains, Riverina region, eastern suburbs coming through. I'll just go further up.
So in all those different places you've got, so let's sort of split them into the city and the rural, you've all got something in common. You've got a local council area. So in those local council areas, there is a lot of information if you dig around on the council website, and you will find plans, and you will find road diversion things. You will find subdivisions for 100-acre lots into 50-acre lots, or you will find subdivision plans for knocking down heritage houses or big houses in the eastern suburbs and building blocks of units.
Well, there's more coming through, Martin.
Yeah,
Lismore, Gunnedah, Tamworth, Darlinghurst, Castleville, Auburn, Inner West. It's great to have all these people joining us. It's fantastic. Lovely.
So that's giving us a lot of, and all that will appear on the video of this when with the chat.
Not the chat line won't, but they're just our conversation about those places.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So if there's any specific questions, please ask them. So that was the point of that. So as in one area, to really get some really solid evidence about what's happening in your local area, go to your local council website. Next. A couple of examples that I picked up over the years. Here's Tamworth. I did an activity with the class on Tamworth. So best wishes to that person who's from Tamworth was just there. And we just did a straight, a little thing as a city person to understand rural areas. So I was able to then get the girls to do this, and this was their perception of what Tamworth is like. You can flip that and get your perception of another area of Sydney is like, or a different area to yours. But the next one that I really enjoyed, because this really tapped into the girls in my case, because they were able to actually see that their local area has unique things about it after I started exploring different country towns. But what I want to show you next is, this is a student who would be a typical student with disability provisions. And this sort of work here was by her, and this was the only thing that she was able to do, but it was absolutely brilliant to get this far as a piece of student work from her. I think you'll understand what I'm saying with this. And so you can imagine here, this was just an outstanding piece of work for her, and the pride that she had in just being able to do something like this by using a technology that she was comfortable with. She learned about another country town that she'd never heard of, and since then she's actually spoken to me over time about her interest in country music. So it's just really interesting, that little simple thing there for a student that basically was just quite simply focused on learning by audio and visual means. So I was really pleased that that little one by connecting with the different needs of the different students group. Going to the next slide, you can have a look at here in these different pictures that I've taken over time. If you look closely at these two pictures, I'm going to move my mouse. Yes. You can just see over there the vacant block of land just there. This was during the Gold Coast Marathon. I was staying at visiting my parents just there. And if you look up the slide on the right-hand side, you can see the 8-storey apartment that's been built on the same vacant block of land. So my suggestion for you is if you're going to do some research on an area that you know, take your camera out and take into account change over time. You might not recognise the change, but the change will happen if you go back to the same place all the time you take photos. So you can see the people in the marathon running down the bottom there, so it was early in the morning, and that other photos you can see the shades come over onto the beach. So there's a whole lot of things there you could talk about. That particular unit block was very controversial for the local area. I won't say who the owner is, but it's a person or two people who own a very large department store complex in Australia. And it was built on, it's got one apartment per floor, and at that stage it went 4 stories over the prescribed limit. If you move a bit closer to the bottom of the picture, you can see a small house just there, right on the beach, and runs a laneway. It's at the end of up near Terre Avenue on Main Beach. There's another house on the other side. And that particular one that's just there, they've got a DAU now for a 28-storey apartment block right on the beach. Now, that is a classic study to follow if you're interested, and you only come across that if you get yourself involved in a local area, read the local news and find out what's going on. So every time I go up to the Gold Coast, I take a photo from this balcony, but if you look closely down the bottom, if you swing to the right, I've got other photos when the beach has been completely torn apart, and it's about a 4-metre drop down to the water, and they've had cranes there bringing in huge boulders of sandstone and then putting sand on top of it. You don't see that unless you get those regular photos over time. So that's another great local topic that you can pick up on if you live in that area. Once again, there's a photo of Main Beach. You can see all the, you can see where that's right on the grass verge between Main Beach and Surfers Paradise, and it's in the back straight of the V8 races when they have that in October, just there. And that's another study in itself. If you go there, the whole Gold Coast is completely closed down to the V8. They get everything out of the way when schoolies start to go 3 weeks later. So it's a really interesting study from that point of view. But you can see that the rocks they're putting in there, and there's sand all over those rocks now to protect the beach.
That raises a whole range of discussions with the students about management. Should it be like this? What's going to happen? What about in the future? So using photos from the local area can lead to really reflective questions and engaging in future management.
Yeah, and if you go into any classroom, if you're sort of really keen, where they've been on holidays and where there's been, there's always a couple of students who've been to the Gold Coast. There's a few students who've been to different locations, and once you start to get to know where the students live, then you can get a sense of where you can engage. In fact, I actually know in my classes at the beginning of the year the suburbs that the students live in rather before their names. So I'll go around and I will ask them all their suburbs, and then that becomes my point of contact for discussion. So you live there, okay, you've got freeway going through your place, what's that like? Sort of things, and they tell me about it. So I think that's where you can get real buy-in from the students about their research. Look, I'm not explicitly, I'll just have a bit of caveat. I know some of you might be wanting specific things about the SGP. The SGP will essentially be gone as it is in a couple of years with the Australian curriculum. It will be another version, of research. So I just want you to sort of extrapolate the discussion here about how you could get interest in a topic that's relevant to your students.
Well, we've got a question just exactly on that, Martin. Stephanie has said that they're using, for their SGP, the students, we are doing a class SGP to help students understand the process of research. Our investigation is on the effectiveness of wastage measures at Cromwell Park. What kind of government documents should we be looking for? So when Cromwell Park. So when teachers are doing SGPs and they're looking for information, secondary sources for their students. So different government. There'll be different government.
I'm going to claim English now. Where's Cromwell Park?
Cromwell Park, I'm not quite sure.
So you could give us a opinion about another place that I might know. But essentially, the New South Wales Department of Planning has got lots of good resources. Later on, at the end of my PowerPoint, you skip ahead, you can see some links to those resources that may help.
Oh, okay, good.
Just there. The local council might sort of say, what was the specific issue?
Getting government documents about the effectiveness on waste management.
All right. The trick there is to get into the government websites. From what I can see, is they officially have to make public available documents, but the trick is burrowing down the right rabbit hole. Because some of the documents they want really public, and the others they just want to say they're there, and if you can find them. So I would suggest you dig around in the environment, the official government environment and waste portfolio, which I don't know what it is.
And the EPA.
Definitely.
The Environmental Protection Authority, they would probably have some information as well as the local government. But I think that organisation may have documents to help in that regard as well.
But I'll make a note of that. And what I would do is Stephanie wants to get in contact with me through Twitter or martinpills.com, or my mobile number is easy to remember. It's 044 running. I'm happy for you to text me 044 running, and I'll reply as soon as I can.
Okay, so thank you, Stephanie. If you contact Martin, he'll in one of those ways.
So
he'll be able to help
044 running. Or email martinpills@gmail.com. Okay, to move on.
Yes, and please send any more questions through that you have as we go on.
Okay. The next one's Bulahdelah. Here I am. This is me experimenting with digital cameras in the early 2000s. So I put it down in the grass and I was trying to be creative, not really part of the bone of my body. But as I was sitting there after this, I took this photo here. And this is the property I used to live in Bulahdelah for about 20 years. It was a dairy farm. The family owned quite a number of properties in the valley. It's called Markwell Valley. It's 12 kilometres from Bulahdelah on the road to Stroud. And in the particular valley, there were chicken sheds, there was dairy farms, and all those have gone by the wayside now. But this particular truck was taken, and then behind me was 1,000 acres of forestry land. And the locals would go in there and they would do logging, and then all the offshoots from the logging would be dragged into the local town sawmill, and then all the wood chips would be created. And this is one of the trucks of the local area. The small country town was coming in and getting the wood chip. Obviously, then there's two sides. There's argument, there's always perspectives. It's providing money and income and employment for people in a local area. Then the other side of it is the environmental side of it as well. This is something you can unpack. So I did a lot of work in this space, trying to get an understanding of rural country towns. At that stage, I didn't have many students who had experienced rural areas, so I was able to sort of show that with it. But all those people that are on there who come from rural areas, if you have a good look around, there's plenty for you to dig into if you want to. The next one is Dunedoo. And this is part of civics and citizenship. I'm very fortunate in my school to have an outreach program. We send 6 students to Dunedoo to do some work in the local community. And in this particular occasion, this is a very large grain silo farm that was just there. And I've had a good look around there to see what they do. On the right-hand side here, this was the legacy of the 2008, what was the funding? The Building Education Revolution.
Oh, Kevin Rudd.
Yeah, that's right. They got funding there. They got this far, but then they ran out of money and the actual water tank wasn't connected up. And the locals didn't have the time or the money to reconnect it, and so that's a project that we've been able to support it. So I was suggesting if you're sort of a teacher in a school and you want to sort of make your geography live, think of a little community project that you could do that revolves around local geography, and you might get something off the ground to build understanding. Knock-on effect is then they actually get a feeling for live geography. It can become the basis of an SGP, or maybe even then get more students doing the subject in the year. So that's that bit. I just want to break now and just talk about the technology side of things. I want to show you this. This was in 2005. I was at a Voca at a house and I was on a holiday and I didn't know what it was. Now I'm going to ask you, do you know what it was? I'm happy for you to sort of reply in later on. But essentially what I did was at that point here, it was before Twitter and Facebook and all those sorts of things, but blogging was around. I was doing a lot of blogging, you may remember back that time, 2005, Sharon. And I put out a message on my blogging account. I went to bed, and the next morning, one of my running friends replied to me. He was just a person who knew a bit about it. He said, it's related to the TV. You need to get this, then you'll be able to get your TV to work. And that's what the point of it was. I wanted to do a sustainable version. And I missed it that night. So anyway, that's what happened the next day. And what that taught me was the value of sharing. And I think people are scared about sharing. I think we need to encourage sharing in schools, because when you do sharing, the learning multiplies. And I've got a little activity that you might want to use, and you've got the PowerPoint to see it. What I've done is, and you can do this in your class, is maybe just take 30 seconds yourself now by yourself and try and tell me who those different people are. And when I've done that activity at school, I've done it with teachers, and I've done it with students with pictures of people that they actually know. And this was put together a few years ago, so it's a little bit out of date. Anyone you don't recognise, Sharon?
There's a couple there I don't know. I recognise the oldies, but that's a generational thing.
I wonder how the people who live in that what they're recognising.
Show my age here. Brian Henderson is our favourite.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's really interesting is there's not many people know this person. We've got on the left-hand side, the third row. They might have recognised him last night. And not a lot of people know on the next slide there's another person as well. And that person is David Sears. And only 45% of Australians have access to Foxtel. And only recently Foxtel has gone live with Sky News on free-to-air on 103, I think, on the digital platform. But he's the leading political commentator and journalist in the country. People haven't seen him a couple of times a year because he's not on free-to-air TV. But anyway, the point of the exercise was this, is when you do that, you get people to do, this is how I suggest you do an activity like this with students. First thing you do is you get them to do 30 seconds by themselves. Then you say with the person next to them, okay, the two of you together, tell me how you can work out. And you can see where I'm going. At the end of the activity, it's quite clear that when you pool the heads of a number of people in a room, your learning increases and even accelerates. And that message becomes very powerful when you're doing an SGP, because if you do that at the beginning of a lesson, what you do is you break down the barriers about people competing against each other, and they start to share their resources. And I'll start to say, oh, look, you're doing something on the North Connects tunnel. I found this in the paper. Here you go. It's for you. And if you can get that sort of collaborative culture happening in a classroom, you will have really positive spin-off effects on spreading into the year 12. Once they get past the assessments, they stop competing against each other. They start working together. And then if you get them all working together, they're all going to improve, hopefully, and then that might improve the results at school, potentially then improve the numbers for you and your subjects and things like that. You can do this a number of ways. You can do pictures of different people at different times. Anyone in particular want to know who's there? You don't know?
Oh, yes. Anyone got anyone there that they don't recognise and would like to know? So just send it through.
Is anyone there you don't know?
Is it? Well, yes, yeah, this one, yeah. Something K. No idea.
Kay. Kay, that's in Game of Thrones, and I don't even know the actress's name. And actually, I think if I've got it right, that K is the same as M. Someone can tell me that. One's the actress, and one's the character.
Oh, right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then on to the right, Dexter next to her, Bogart, Rowling, the latest James Bond. Up top, yeah.
Very young Bill Shorten.
Yeah, young Bill Shorten. Okay, that's the point of that. Then hopefully you get a sense of the importance of sharing. This one here, I went down. My wife plays tennis, and for the first time in our life, we were able to go to the tennis. So they moved the tennis to into January, and none of us can get there. Have a look closely at this. I was standing there, the tide was up, and I saw these flat boats, and I had no idea what they were there for. So I had a look at that, and then I looked really closely. You see the photos on the right, they were coming through in stages. Once again, it's all about the sharing side of things. I put a post up on Facebook in January in that particular year. I wonder if the Yarra is tidal or is there a weir downstream? There's not much room. Let's make that comment. Hashtag Geography. Then I got some replies. But a lot of my running things, a bit hot in here. A lot of my running friends there, Greg, and he said, look, it's tidal, but it's also it's rained a fair bit. There's an upstream weir at Digital Falls and in Clifton Hill to ensure the city doesn't flood. What you see is pretty common. And then there's a few friends having a bit of fun. We were staying on Break Island, and then my friend Andy from South Island, New Zealand, who's my sponsoring information about what's happening in Christchurch with the earlier disaster a few years ago. So that sharing enabled me to improve my geographical understanding, and that really just helped me understand that. And I've shared that example in relation to the hydrosphere and lithosphere and that picture. And if you look really closely at my big picture there, you can't see it, but there's a person just at the back just there, and he's standing up there telling everyone to duck. So they get their heads here going through the tunnel. So that was pretty cool to see that live, and that just piqued my interest. Does that unleash the geography in you? Do you see this sort of thing when we're walking around in the city or places like that? That's what we need to engender in our students. So a little bit of a summary. Find a geographical issue that you're passionate about. Tell your story about it. Link it to the passions and then to the SGP topic. And my story is about homelessness. So I'd like to go into a bit there now. How are we going for time?
You're good. Yeah, good too. Yeah. I think like that in the SGP, just getting them to do something very local and just honing in on it. It doesn't have to be a huge suburb. It's just a street or a small park or on there, with our borders. I always like to encourage them to do something at home.
Definitely.
Because they get great stories from their dad, their mum, and their grandparents about the history of the property and just the management strategies you're using, just on a small part of it. So that in-depth local look is so valuable. They learn so much about their local area, as well as the process for doing this. And really it's more about the process too, that they're investigating something they're interested in and the skills they learn rather than...
You're exactly right, Sharon, because this is where I'm going with the process here now. So in these next couple of slides what I do is I introduce the topic about something that I'm passionate about, and I'll share with you a response I got from the student, which blew me away. And this is where I get them engaged in the local thing. It's simple, it's nice and local, it's tight, and the rest of it. So on one of my walks and one of my runs, I was going down the stairs at Hornsby, and you can see here there's a bit of an area clear side where there's a homeless person. He's on the bottom right-hand side just there. Now, I'll accelerate through the story. With some guilt, I stopped and I took a photo of that and just went on. 2 months later, I was there. I went back to the same spot, and you can see that they've basically put a cage around that spot where that person was living. So they've moved this person on. So there were 2 things that came out of this for me for topics for SGP, so I shared the girls. One was homelessness, the other was building infrastructure in Hornsby. Okay, because that's a big bridge now that's over Hornsby Station. So there's 2 sides there. I got girls responding to both these issues from different angles. And then from that, a lot of girls were able to identify with other things in their local area because they were opening their eyes to things. So then the next slide was this. About 3 months later, there's a story about a homeless woman who died in Hornsby due to the extreme cold weather. So I was able to draw the thread together, and this was once again on one of my running trails I run on in Hornsby, so I knew exactly where this poor lady died. It wasn't the person in the earlier photo, but by drawing together 3 different photos and research, this sort of evolved in 2016 into an approach that I adopted in 2016-17 for my SGP. So then I got a lot of buy-in from students about the homelessness, and so that was really interesting. So then what happened was, one night I was really quite passionate about it, and I did a Facebook post. Went to bed, didn't think too much, but I just wanted to repair the world, and I just told the story like this on Facebook. Got up the next morning and I had something like 63 comments on it. I've been involved in social media for a long time, as you probably know, Sharon. Interestingly, some people on Twitter. It's really interesting. Try hashtag GTA MSW on Facebook if you want. Because no one's contributing to Twitter. They're probably scared of the sort of the world at times. But if you're on Facebook or Instagram, try the GTA MSW hashtag there, and I'll look for you there as well. Anyway, you can see here that people are connecting to me on this, but what was really significant was this. Look at Scott down here. This is a public forum, so I haven't hid their names, so I'm not worried about this. Here, he said, Homeless New South Wales, get in contact with Catherine Goonan. She's the CEO. But if you look very closely a bit further, that response came in at 8:07 a.m. But Scott up here, he spotted it at 7:29. So he actually sat on it for 40 minutes. He thought this is significant, so he came in with that. He thought about it and he shared with me that. That inspired me then to get involved with the local council, and I've been doing local council meetings every second Wednesday since December 2015. And I went to the council and I found they had a subcommittee on homelessness. So I went and met the chair of the subcommittee and I got more information about homelessness in the area. So I explored this whole story with my students. So I kept on going with that. I must say I've got them there. So there's some of the other comments I got, and you'll see those later on. Okay. And then I wrote then what came out of that as an aside, I ended up doing a little presentation, a school-related thing as well, which is a project from the point of view of the SGP that got all the girls in. And here I continued to go back. So now I've got a whole series of photos of the complete infrastructure side of what happened with this. And there have been students who've latched onto this about infrastructure in Hornsby. So,
Martin, I think you just really zeroed in on a key thing that we really want to come out of the SGP, that the students go through this process, they're researching, and they're motivated to act. Geography is really about being engaged, involved, and then being a citizen that will get involved and act on something.
Exactly.
And that's what we love to see. As an aside, your students you can put your students' SGPs in the Arthur Phillip fieldwork competition, which we had. We had, like 180 entries this year across a variety of categories. And the ones that really take our attention is the ones that have gone that step further and acted.
That's right.
They've been inspired to do something, and that's exactly the process of the SGP that you went through.
Yeah.
Researching, getting more information, primary, secondary, went to council, but then acted.
Yeah, and it is really it's not just a fad. It's unleashing your inner geographer. And if you don't have the passion for it, well, find it in the other subject you might be teaching. But that's what you need to get the engagement. So. A few SGP examples. SGP, the beach or a river. So let's have a look. If you're many of you might live on a coastal area, all right? So that's why I sort of picked this one as an example. A lot of people might be on the coast. And many of you might live in country towns like Tamworth. So when I was in Tamworth recently, I did a run in Tamworth, and there's my sort of garden for the run. The students always like that. I always run 6K, so I have a good look around. But while I run, I take my phone. On this particular day, on my 6K exploring run in Tamworth, I noticed the photo on the top right was the Peel River, which happened to be the river that flowed through the back of the grain farm I was staying at near the Selective High School out there. I've got the name of the suburb, it's out Killara, that's it out there. And on the bottom left-hand side, you don't pay much attention to that. There's a lovely street tracking on the left-hand, the Peel River's on the left. But a little bit further over, there are hundreds of trees with fruit bats in them. So the whole area's got a fruit bat problem there. So that in itself will be a fascinating study as well. I'm sure the person from Tamworth or the person from Tamworth would know that area. So that's really interesting. But then I compare that then to our next one. This is at the back of the property that I visited in Tamworth quite regularly. And you can see here there's the pump. It was a 100-acre property and all the water is pumped out of there. They've got licence. I think this one had 4 megalitres. I think that's the land use licence. But there at the moment in Tamworth, it's not that green and all irrigation's been stopped due to the drought. That's my understanding. And you can see there a really good example of hydrosphere, lithosphere, the fence line there and all the debris lined up against the fence on the right-hand side. I happened to be there on a night when it was raining. So the next day I went down and you can see where the river was up. It wasn't raining in the river, but it was actually in my area, but I heard it was raining upstream. So I went down to the back of the page the next day and you can see what's happened here. If I go back to this picture just here, just see how the blue drum is halfway down the thing. We went down the night before because this is the local knowledge that the farmer had. But he said, we're not getting rain here, but it's raining upstream. Unless I pull that pump right up the top, we'll be down in the Peel River in Tamworth in about 3 hours. So we actually went down and I helped him and he pulled that right up to the top of the thing. You can see there, you can see how high the water is. If you look at the tree that's just there, you can see the bee and the tree on the right and the trees on the left, the branches cut. You can see where they've been completely disappeared from the picture. So that was a great example of, live active geography. Okay, so there was that side of it there. Avoca Beach. These pictures aren't mine. I apologise for that, and I can't find the source number on Facebook because I'm pretty truthful to sourcing. The rest of the photos are mine. You can see here, right on the point of Avoca Beach, what happened here in the storm. The sand wall was there, and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty clear cut if you're in a coastal area and you want to look at, coastal deposition, coastal erosion, and things like that. And those sort of pictures really make it live. Then, of course, that made me explore. This is Avoca Beach in 1915. So quite essentially, if you look way down there, I went exploring around with my mouse going just there. It was where that previous photo was, just there. So you can see Avoca Beach, and that really gives you a real sense of change over time.
And they're those key geography questions, aren't they? What is it? Where is it? What it used to be like? What's it like now? Should it be like this? And just by using the local area and some photographs,
you can pull it all together. So then I spent many years, I'm very fortunate to be able to go to Avoca when I want to. And what I have here then is, I was running on the beach, in this was January. You can see those apartments up Cliff Road at Avoca Beach. They're right on the edge if you look very closely up the escarpment just there. The 2 photos that are just there. And I thought I hadn't seen it from that angle, hadn't paid attention. I'm usually sweating and puffing at that part of the run. But what I noticed there, that was really interesting. I put a post up on Facebook about that. And then people replied to me and they were sort of saying, someone found a geological report. Someone actually said they stayed at that penthouse and they said, yes, it's hard rock there, not sandstone, stunning views. But they said, it is quite close on the side. But then another person came in and provided this really detailed story about the geological formation of the Avoca Beach for me. Sharing.
Sure.
It's just
knowledge.
Absolutely, and fully referenced. It was absolutely fantastic. And once again, I share that with my students. So you can see, I'm really going down the path of getting that passion there to get the project moving. Next one, local council and local land use. Any questions before we go into that? Anything else there?
Stephanie replied to us. Peter replied that Cromwell Park is near Melbourne.
Oh, right. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff there you can get on that whole Larkhill side and the rest of the place there. The council there.
Council records and then try those other government records as well.
Definitely. Sorry for my ignorance, everyone.
No,
learn something and share. Anything else?
Okay, yes, so here's another one. I don't live in the area of the school, so I'm not on top of the issues in the area. This makes it harder for me to search ideas for SGP. I was only saying today about choosing something they are passionate about, but some are either clueless or unaware of anything. But these issues, like Avoca, are great, but not practical. Students are stretched from Liverpool to Cairns with my class. Any advice on directing them? This is from Peter.
Peter, and where it is, works?
Okay, so I think the students stretch from Liverpool to Camden.
Excellent.
He's not in that area. So what are some strategies to get them engaged?
My suggestion, Peter, is, and it depends how comfortable you feel about this, you don't have to tell them it's your local area. Find something that you're passionate about in your local area or an area that you know really well, whether it's a holiday place or your family area before you move to where you're living now, and do the homelessness equivalent for you. And then what you do then is you actually put the girls into groups. I'll probably try the approach of what suburbs or suburbs of that area. I used to live in Liverpool. The house I lived in Castle Ray Street is now a 10-storey apartment block, so I know exactly that area you're talking about. And I recently went there to have a look at where my old Flyborough house was. So you can get the different scenarios there, and then you get the kids pulled together. There's so much happening in that space, okay, with the airport. All right, there's so much happening in that space with the strip retail areas that still exist in that area. There's so much happening in the space with the Georges River. I think if you sort of break it down, Peter, if you break it down, Peter, into the different things, think, what is it about the water, the hydrosphere, see if they're interested. If they're not interested, move on. What is it about the land, the lithosphere? If they're not interested, move on. What is it about the atmosphere? If they're a bit hard to be, if there's any pollution, and what is it about, the biosphere in the area? But that's one aspect of the SGP. Then you can go down that whole path, seeing if there's any interest about traffic congestion. If there's anything in relation to people who live in those suburbs and have to suffer the commute, to the city, or they might commute to the north, what I call the northern suburbs of Barrel. They might commute to Campbelltown and Camden and Picton for work. So I think if you work really hard and work on where the students live and you model your passion in your area, if you feel comfortable, then you go, bang, this can apply to your area. That's probably my suggestion.
I think modelling those responses and putting it in a personal context helps students connect as well. And then I would also suggest students bringing the local paper.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Their local paper that they get thrown on their front lawn, bring those in and let's have a look at, get them in groups. What are the issues in that local paper? What are the issues here? Because they're full of those local issues.
And the local papers are all online, so you can just go file, print, PDF, and normal. I must admit, I do subscribe if you want some resources. Since I've stopped going to university, think about starting an account with the State Library of New South Wales that gives you access to all academic journals and articles without having to pay a cent. I do have subscriptions to the Daily Telegraph and the Australian and the Herald. It costs me a bit of money, but then I can go in there and I can just go file, print, PDF, articles, and going through the things. So just a question of maybe a couple of you leveraging it, and then sharing resources between yourself, or your school might have it as well.
Now, Martin, I think our Zoom does cut off at 5.
What time is it?
I think now. No, we can keep going. We can keep going. Okay, that's great. So if you wish to stay online,
I'd like to get to a couple of other things in the late 5 minutes.
Okay. Now we've got, it's 2 minutes to 5, but this is good. So Martin, if you run through those, and then we've got a couple of other questions.
Excellent, let's do that.
All right. Okay, let's do this.
Let me talk about a few things on the slides and you can look at them as we go. Hopefully you've got them open.
And Martin, are we able to have this, a version of this for the website to go with the video?
Yeah, there's no reason why. I might just check a couple of the Facebook pages.
Facebook, edited.
That's fine. This is an activity using this little activity here. This is just a hypothetical area. And what I did was I got them to do an activity about building a livable, sustainable, productive and collaborative city or a country town using the maps. Do you put the town up on the mountain on the left-hand side? Do you put all the houses along the river? All that sort of stuff, talking through those processes. But then what I did was I linked it directly to Hornsby Council and talked about how Hornsby Council has livability, sustainability and all those options and links to the local council. Then you can sort of see that you can have a theory-based thing and then you can link to your suburb. So you could just do a little SGP on their little area about what's it like to live in Port Hills where I live. But it's a really tight little thing. I'll go on to the next one. Here's a friend of mine who's moving from Blacktown to up the mid-north coast, and I sent him a message. He said, he put a message on Facebook. I've taken John's details out, but basically he said he's moving. I asked him a question. If you don't mind, John, the geography is interested in your decision-making process. And he replied. I said to him, there were push and pull factors, and he answered the question about why he's leaving Sydney and why he's moving to the mid-north coast. And that's a really, really good thing about the country people, internal migration, that sort of stuff. Push pull and the rest of that. And that just came out just by using my connections and sharing with people. You can see his reply to me, on social media land. So you can see there, and he got lots of comments on that, and he made the effort to reply to me. So that's another example where you never know where you're going to find information. This one's really interesting. I got into this at Hornsby Council. This is a local member who's the Ward A councillor for Hornsby up in Barara, and there's an RSL club there. But the RSL club is a mixture of land owned by the RSL club, Crown land and Hornsby land. And you can see by that picture, no one's maintaining the roads. It's been going on since 1989. No one's putting their hand up to fix it. And he's been pushing hard to get this across the line. And so who's responsible for fixing it? And this is a great little tiny SGP. And I went back there a few weeks ago and I took some photos. And you can see my feet on the left-hand side. You can see the drains going on behind the car park. All that grass area is sludgy. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see where my feet went into the area. So that was just a great study about lithosphere and hydrosphere and land use around an area and perspectives and people's responsibilities and things. So I'll sharing that one. It was particularly researched, I suppose, about 2 weeks ago. About an issue in Barara, and I've got students living in Barara. Peter, that's another thing. Maybe you need to go out and about in the suburb and take some photos. Spend an afternoon or a Saturday zipping around different suburbs. That's what I would possibly do as well. Then you can see this is a car park up the top of the hill from it. It's not working very well. The other thing is we had the storms in Barara in the last holidays, so we quickly went around and got photos. You can see all the tarpaulins on the houses on the right-hand side just there. The issue with that has become is that the insurances, everyone's insured, but the problem is if you've got a tarp on your place, your place is not going to be fixed for 6 months because they've got you to a livable state. So a lot of the people are waiting 6 to 8 months. The level of destruction here was quite amazing. And then here, this is the Hornsby Quarry, where all the fill from the North Connects tunnel has gone into the quarry to basically build it up at 50, 60, 70 metres so the sides don't fall in, and it's going to become a parkland, a cycle park.
It's a rehabilitation project.
Rehabilitation project, so that's in my area as well. With the SGP, when it comes to doing the SGP, I spend a lot of time where I actually got the girls to actually talk about their things, and then I go to the folk in red to give them examples of how to, this particular student got back to me and said, I've got 4 topics from Canberra, and we discussed which of those 4 topics are the most useful potentially. So have a look at that. I really strongly suggest you have that sort of dialogue with your students. It's very important when you're doing SGP to teach concepts. And when you talk about the idea of consequences, for example, I did an activity where I broke consequences into positive and negative, and also scale, local, regional, national and international, and over time, short-term, mid-term and long-term. So basically you say traffic problems in Hornsby have been solved by the North Connects, but it's negative because there's a toll there, and it's negative for people who've got a freeway going underneath their house, like me. I've got 150 metres underneath me. Right. Okay, I can hear them for the last 18 months. Drill. Okay, I'm directly, and I actually have had cracks in my house, and I've had them come in and take photos. So I'm actually living live geography when it comes to the North Connects tunnel. And I'm pretty high up in terms of distance from the tunnel. So that's a great study. I always share that story with the students as well. Then you've got students with different abilities. That's a student's one. There's a student there who used OneNote to scribble it out like that. There's another student who did the same thing because it's on their initiative, not me. So that was something that helped them. Just briefly, I want to run around Sydney. I have 2 rules. It's probably more than a marathon, and I've got to be connected to different parts. But in the different runs I've done so far, this was the run I did from recently from Pennant Hills to Manly. And so as I did that run from Pennant Hills to Manly, it was around, as I was there, I was taking photos of the different, it was a 45k run, it took me 6 days to do, and I took photos of all the different suburbs, the different types of transport that I went through. I'm not suggesting you go for a run, but I am suggesting if you go for a bike ride or you go for a drive, take some photos.
Map it, Google My Maps, map it on as well.
Map it on like that, and put on the cross-section and show them the thing. That made me think about an SGP on Main Road geography, because when I did the run from Pennant Hills to Richmond, so that was going through Bella Vista and that area there, and Rouse Hill. Then I did Penrith along the Great Western Highway, that whole area, the old road. I did the Manly run, and I did a run from Liverpool to Strathfield to Chatswood and up to Pennant Hills. That was a reflective run. I was on the day of my father who died a few years ago, and I ran all the different houses with their dinners of family. but I've learned so much. And you see on the right-hand side, it's made me reflect on urban growth and decline, culture and social change, transport in Sydney, traffic congestion, recreational land use, light industrial land use, infrastructure provision. There's a heap of information there if you open your eyes as you're going around. There's my North Connect story, okay? I can elaborate that on more, but quite literally, there's cracks in the home. I've had them on twice to take photos. I'm not going to get any compensation. And because I'm a geographer, 10 years ago, I knew the tunnel was coming. I didn't renovate my house. And that was a really, really good decision by me because I thought I can't risk this. And so, and I told the students that. So that's a really, really good story about active geography. And there's Pennant Hills Road. Then I thought, you know, I did some research on Pennant Hills Road, how it's changed. That's down near Tara and Kings. That's that Burns site just there. That's Pennant Hills Road up, I think, at North, up at Thornley, just there. That's Pennant Hills Road. Can't work out where that one is. And that's West Pennant Hills, just there on one of the main corners. It's probably Thompson's Corner, just there. There's another one of West Pennant Hills Roads, all found on Facebook, the old history sites and the rest of it.
Yeah, and the library, the State Library's got great old photos you can access.
And then there's Pennant Hills, Pennant Hills now, where I live. Shared economy, a lot on that. One of interest, for example, I went to, what's it called? Dangar Island. And one of these social issues on Dangar Island is that people are Airbnb their boat sheds. And so people are coming in on boats. Part of it is they're all down the bottom of having their Airbnb and boat sheds, and all the locals are having issues in the area of Airbnb. Great little study. Yeah, so it's a really, really good one from that there. There's the Dangar Island example I was telling you about. And interestingly, the other thing about there is that the NBN has decided they're not going to run a cable through the water to Dangar Island because of the seagrass, even though over the same seagrass they've got sewer lines and electrical lines to the island. I think it's more about money, I don't know for sure. But the other interesting thing is the same thing with satellite. If you know satellite, with Foxtel's got to be facing north. So all the people on the south side of the island of Dangar, they've got no Foxtel TV reception. You're not going to have any internet reception either. Okay, so that's a great study in itself once you start digging away in a local area. I won't even go there, so I'll have to come back to more later on. But there's there. Secondary resources, the local council stuff, the Bulladila local council stuff. This is the New South Wales government site that I was telling you about. There's some links to that. And if it's not there, there'll be in the other links above in my martinfills.com page. Okay, I have resources in those. And that gives you, it's also part of the Greater Sydney Planning Authority. These are really good documents that you can find through that website I just mentioned there. Changing New South Wales, all sorts of stuff on the different areas. Typo there, sorry, regional land use. Then you've got different regions. This is me. I'm in the North region, and what the action plan is and what they're doing. You know, you need to understand things like, you know, what's called a priority precinct. It's about 13 in Sydney, and if you're a priority precinct, basically the state government can decide what can be built. And what's happened now with Hornsby Council and other councils is the planning decisions have been taken out of the hands of the councillors and the planners. They have what's called IHAB. And IHAB uses basically an independent hearing assessment panel, and they decide what developments occur in a local area.
Okay, so it's not the council's knowledge.
No.
And interesting in regional areas too, the role of the council in that, as opposed to the government actually saying what.
And so you might wonder, in Epping, for example, all the high-rises that went up at Epping, that really didn't go through council. That was called a landscape gateway project. Basically, it was identified as a priority precinct, and that's why they got all the high-rises. And that was fascinating watching the apartments go up when they went through Hornsby Council for planning. And I've got time. Want a story about more?
Yeah.
In Epping, there's on the old side of the Sydney Macquarie University side of Epping. What happened was there was a row of houses. The council couldn't turn them into, by understanding, into heritage houses. They turned into a heritage street. So then the facade of the houses couldn't be changed. Then that got changed in another street. They didn't have the heritage street. So there was 4 houses. It was an odd number. It was 5 houses in a row. The 2 houses on the right-hand side put its AEDA in, got a flush-story apartment block up. The 2 houses on the and they had trouble getting the 3rd house involved. And fair enough, they dug the hills in and didn't want to be part of the development. The other 2 houses on the other side, basically, and they had a laneway around the side and they had medium density housing behind it. They said, well, this person in the third, the one in the middle of the 5, wasn't very cooperative. We're just going to go ahead with our development there. And this person now is surrounded by medium density housing, 5-story there, 5-story there. And because I went to the council meetings, these people get caught out because I went to that council meeting for the first 2, and I went to the council meeting for the other 2, and I realised what happened. There's just a person that lived in the middle.
In the middle. Yeah.
And so they've lost their family homes from the point of view that people looking into their properties.
Yeah, and they've lost their sense of it.
Yeah.
And so following what's happening on local council, and that is an interesting way to get students involved as well.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up there, I think, if you want to. And there's a bit of local stuff about Hornsby and where the freeways are going. And then there's an example of different minutes. They have attachments, and the attachments are huge. They have all the planning things there. You can get really good ideas there. For me, going to the next level, I've been involved in the local community. So I met my local member many years ago, just there, Matt King. And we worked with him and another local member, David Tudorhope, and we got $5 million to build a cycle path from Tennant Hills to Epping. And it's more action like that. It hasn't happened yet, but the money's been spent. Then there's a whole pile of things there, going through. So I don't know what time it is now.
Thanks, Mark. I think there's been a great range of ideas about how engaging. You've not only engaged in one local area, you've engaged in many local areas through your connections over time and sport, and so there's lots of opportunities there. Okay, any questions here? No, I think there's been a question about, someone made a suggestion, and the student said you're doing a class SGP topic. So someone was wondering, is that a good idea? Is it good to model one first of all, and they can do it maybe in the younger years, they do a similar one and model it, and
it is. I guess there's a couple of things that play into that. One would be the size of the class. The other would be the ability range of the class. The other would be is the availability of resources around the topic, because you might get a lot of similar things. You could do it slightly from a thematic point of view. You could sort of say, okay, we're going to do a biophysical SGP in 2019 and 3D going to do biosphere, 3D going to do lithosphere, something like that in your local area. Probably I would be not inclined, but I understand why you would do that if you're still starting out. Because it's pretty full on getting people, it's labour intensive. If you want it to go well, you see a lot of time talking to people. Working with them. And
if it works, getting the students engaged, well, that's great too. Yeah, fantastic. Right. And just a couple of other things before we all head off. For our teachers in rural areas, look, GTA still has a number of stimulus booklets available that we've used at previous conference, and we do have some on Tamworth, Dubbo, Wagga and Coffs Harbour, and they've got topographic maps, they've got climate graph, population information, images. So you're welcome to contact me through GTA. If you email GTA office, they can help you and we can get some of those out to you. They're $3 per stimulus booklet. So if you need some resources, we can help you with those. And also I did mention that in term 2 we're going to have another regional conference, and just brief details. It's going to be in Kiama on the 30th and 31st of May, and we are focusing on field work. And so Susan Colvis is going to be giving us a keynote on some of the theory in field work, the inquiry-based field work, and making geography engaging outside the classroom. And the teachers who attend will have an opportunity. We're going to have 4 different streams, 4 different places that people will go and really inquire into that area. And then the second day, it's going to be a 2-day fieldwork conference. The second day, you'll be engaged in actually developing fieldwork activities and assessment, and networking with teachers in your group and producing something that you can actually will be practically used in your school and applied to your area. So we will have limited spaces for that. Information will be given to you at via the website. Registration won't open until the end of next week, and at the conference there'll be more information as well. But we will have a little video promotional clip for you on our website the week after next. So 30th, 31st of May. It'll be great to see teachers down in Kiama. We're so fortunate. We've got Minnamurra Rainforest, we've got the Crooked River Winery, we've got a micro dairy we're going to, we've got coastal areas, and we've also got an urban study on Shell Harbour and those areas of the North Macquarie Development and Albion Park. So we've got plenty to do. It'll be a great opportunity for networking and talking some geography and having some fun. So we look forward to seeing you there as well. If you're going to the conference, have a great time. Thanks, Martin. Always good to chat and share some geography. Thanks, Michael, for your work, as always.
I've just seen some of the comments. Thank you so much for the comments that are there. I was too busy focusing on the PowerPoint. Two things. I can see clearly that a lot of you are not engaging at the moment with social media. I think it's really important to work with each other and connect with each other. So if you can just get yourself onto Facebook, I just looked on Facebook, I didn't see any GTA NSW hashtags, I didn't see any on Twitter. Perfectly okay, but if you are on that space, don't be shy, because if you start connecting with people, it'll really just help you so much, particularly those schools in remote areas, because we can help each other by doing it. The second thing is as well, I will leave all my resources on my page for a while, but not indefinitely, so feel free to grab what you want to grab just there, and I will make a more streamlined version of it to go on the GTA site. So that's sort of to your benefit because you've been part of the webinar, okay? And then the third thing is, if you have any questions at all, please contact me, 044 running, @Blue on Twitter, or martinlewis@gmail. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully you'll have your Geographer unleashed and you can get your students involved as well.
Yep. And if not Martin, you can always contact me on Twitter and Sharon P. McLean, so you're welcome there, or go through the PTC or GTA website as well to contact us. Great spending time with you. Safe travels home, take care, and enjoy teaching geography. See you soon. Bye.